Send Local Offer is a website containing information and support for children and young people aged 0 to 25 within the Nottinghamshire area who have special educational needs or disabilities.
The Local Offer is like a hub of all information, everything put together on one page. It's really useful for special educational needs, and it's Nottinghamshire and surrounding counties, so even if you're bordering on a county you can still find useful information.
You can use the Local Offer on any device with internet access. You can use it on your phone or tablet. You can also use it on your laptop too.
It's really easy to access it at home through the internet, which is what I do through the internet at home for any reason. You can either go down to your local library and access it there, or if you can't get to the local library, you can telephone the Nottinghamshire County Council Customer Service Department on 0300 500 80 80.
You can find out by going on your favourite search engine. I type in Nottinghamshire Local Offer.
There's absolutely loads of information. There's health, education, social care, clubs, transport. It's all there.
You might want to use the Local Offer to see how you can get some extra support for your child at school, apply for a short break, or just simply see what clubs or activities are available in the local area. Even if you don't know what you're looking for, it's worth just having a look on there because there's so much information available.
We've used the Local Offer quite a lot over the years. It's been really useful for the girls.
When we needed to apply for an educational healthcare plan for our son, we went online and looked at the Local Offer, so we understood the process from start to finish and what steps we needed to take.
The Local Offer website has an area called the Young People Zone. It has been designed to help people with disability in Nottinghamshire.
You can find lots of useful information on the youth zone for young people. For example, health, education, finding a job and hobbies and interests. I have used the Young People's website to look for different jobs that are interested.
And look for all kinds of things. Entertainment, job interviews, places where you go out near your area.
I use the website to look for things to do with my hobbies, such as performing arts activities and areas where I can voice my opinion.
The Send Local Offer is updated all the time, so it's worth checking in on there and seeing if there's any new services or support that may be available to you.
As a member of the Parent Carer Forum, we work with the Local Offer and the County Council and other agencies. We offer advice from a parent carer viewpoint to ensure that our children and young people have the best available to them.
Because we are the ones who are using the website. It is important we are involved, so we can say what we do right and what we don't right.
We have met with the Council and the Futures to give our feedback on the Young People's Zone's website to see if we like it and if it's suitable for others.
I think it's really important for parents and the local authority to work together, because by working together we ensure that our voices are heard and that we get a local offer that works for us. I'd really recommend the Local Offer. There's lots of information all in one place, so from the one website you can find out information from voluntary groups, statutory bodies. There's just lots of information to help you and your children.
If you are a young person with special educational needs or disabilities living in Nottinghamshire, I would say give the Young People Zone a try.
There is lots of information and you can get involved by sending an article, a blog or a vlog.
I think the Local Offer is a really useful resource for parents and carers living within Nottinghamshire. It's a comprehensive hub of information, and I found out about support and services that I wouldn't have otherwise known about.
Thanks, Stuart. You got two of me then, and we don't charge extra. Thank you, it's nice to see you all here. Let's go straight into I think I'll start with a comment, if I may, because this is another thick, heavy agenda. So I just want to make the point, if I may, because we have got a lot to get through. Can we focus our comments and conversation today on the papers before us? I know occasionally we go off on tangents, but if we can try and focus on what's in front of us, and if people want to see me and talk to me about other things, then catch me outside the meeting. So can we start with item 1, minutes of the last meeting held on the 17th of January? Are we all agreed that they're a fair and accurate record of that meeting? Thank you. Apologies for absence.
Chairman, we have some substitutions. So Councillor Daniel Williamson replaces Councillor Deakin, who is unwell, and Councillor Jim Creamer replaces Councillor Welsh, who is also unwell.
Thank you. Welcome to both. I actually think Councillor Creamer wants a place on this committee permanently. We've seen quite a lot of him lately, and you're very welcome. Item 3, declarations of interest. Do I have any declarations from members, please? Any declarations from officers? Thank you. So we go straight into the first item, item 4. This is the Partnership Strategy for Looked After Children and Care Leavers in Nottinghamshire, and this is the refresh for 2022-2025. There are 3 recommendations on page 25, which I move.
And I second those, Chair.
Thank you. Do I have any comments, questions or observations on this item, please? Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you. We welcome this strategy report.
Councillor Callaghan, could you just move your mic ever so slightly closer? Thank you.
All right. We welcome this report, and on page 16, paragraph 46, it's refreshing to look at, the police now looking at different ways of addressing children in care, and having a trauma-informed practice rather than punitive sanctions for these youngsters. So that's a really good point I'd like to make. And also on page 20, looking at the figures, the percentage of young people in education and employment, it has gone up slightly, but there is still quite a few children that are not in any sort of education or training, and how are we helping these youngsters to get back on track if that's what they need, and also what is the plan beneath the strategy? Will this be brought to further meetings so that we can see how that's helping and supporting going forward?
Thank you. Do I have any more questions from anyone else? Councillor Williamson and Councillor Meakin.
Thank you. Mine's just a quick one, really, on obviously support the paper that's come forward, and there seems to be some really good stuff in it. Specifically in paragraph 59 on page 18, talking about the local offer for care leavers, providing the exemption from council tax. It lists the table. I'm just curious. As we look down between December 21 and January 22, most districts and boroughs are quite level, except for Rushcliffe, which jumps from 14 people taking all this offer to 42. Do we have the reasoning for that? Do we know what's behind that at all?
Thank you. I'll ask officers to respond once I've taken Councillor Meakin's question also. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I welcome this report. Some really good stuff in there. Paragraph 45 states that 2019-20 data shows that the rate of looked after children reoffending is strikingly higher than any other groups. This remains a huge concern. It further states, nationally, children who are looked after after at least 12 months are 5 times more likely to offend them than all children. Do you have figures for Nottinghamshire to give us a direct comparison, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meakin. Marion, would you like to answer? I think Councillor Callaghan's point first, and then work through. Thank you.
Okay. The work of those children who are not in employment or training is at the heart of the Care Leaver service, and they have a personal assistant. It's bespoke and tailored, and it's a real strength. And the young people are tracked and supported, and the numbers are small. Whilst we're talking about percentages, the actual numbers are still relatively small. So we are confident that that this is a real focus into employment or training for the young people. And Steve may expand on that. In relation to paragraph 59, I think, and Steve will correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's difficult to see the comparison because our understanding is broadly almost all children, young people, teenagers apply for the relief. So I don't know the reasons, but it's highly likely that there are more young people staying in Rushcliffe area to claim the tax, and it's increased. But Steve will be able to clarify that. And I think what is heartening is that this exemption of council tax is increasingly known to all these young people who take it up. So I'm not sure that but Steve will correct, I'm not sure that you can read, it is an increase, but I think you may find that there's just more young people living in Rushcliffe district than was the case the previous year, rather than reading it that X number didn't apply. Does that make sense? Or you can take, and I'll pass it over to Steve.
Yeah, I'll comment on that later. I think if Steve can add something, and then I'll also comment.
Yeah,
if I may.
and then in relation, I'm going to leave Steve to deal with the figures with regard to children more likely to be involved with the criminal system. Okay.
I'll switch it. Yeah, thanks. So the answer to the Rushcliffe issue is, I don't know, and I can guess. It's either that we have got a big provider of supported accommodation in Rushcliffe, and perhaps they were slow to get off the mark last year. It might be that we've got a number of asylum-seeking children placed in the Rushcliffe area. But the positive news is that all of the looked after children, the leaving care children now, are benefiting from having the council tax exemption. And it makes a massive difference. You know, it's okay when you're 17 or 18, 19, in your early 20s, living with your mum and dad. But when you haven't got a mum and dad and you're starting out on your own, it makes an absolutely massive difference. So it is a really positive story that the district councils have joined with us, and we've achieved that. And we were the first two-tier council in the country to do that when we did it. So really, really sort of positive story. The thing about children in care becoming involved in criminal behaviour, you know, it's a bit of a catch-22 situation, actually, because some of the children, sadly, were involved in criminal behaviour before they became looked after. And sometimes the criminal behaviour is a reason that they become looked after. So some of the children that come into care, and particularly the children that come into care older, probably haven't had a lot of boundaries imposed on them for quite a period of time. You know, they do get then sent down the wrong track, and the care system tries to prevent further crime occurring. You know, sadly, some care leavers do continue to offend, but we work really, really hard with them to mitigate against that offending behaviour. There was another question that you asked, and I've forgotten what it was.
From Councillor Callaghan, we were talking about the NEAT numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, that was about work readiness. So some of those some of the children that come into care haven't got the life skills or the experience, particularly the ones that come into care later, just to get into a job. You know, it's sad but true. But you know, one of the care leavers got an interview. This is a couple of years ago, actually. You know, for one of our children in care, and asked him to put his best clothes on for the interview, and he went in his football kit because that's what he thought were his best sort of clothes. So clearly not yet ready for formal employment. So we're doing a lot of work now to pre-employment training work, so that young people start to understand some of the rigours and the sort of structure that you need in your life to get into work. And there's the work readiness programmes that are mentioned in the report that the achievement advisors and the PAs are learning on. Terry Galloway, our care leaver champion, he's running a programme as we speak for some of our care leavers to get involved in work readiness preparation. So I really think we're moving in the right direction. And you'll see from the report as well that some of the children that have been in care for a long time, they just go straight into university. You know, and there are lots of children that do that. What we've got to do is focus on those children that really need that extra bit of help to progress.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question first and then I'll revisit the questions that have been asked. When we look at the documents, page 3 of the strategy document itself, which has the signatories to the scheme, I note that what's in our papers appears to have some signatures missing. So I just want to be clear with committee members. It's my understanding that this is not because people have not signed up to this. This is simply a technical matter that we haven't yet got those electronic signatures to drop in, and that will be resolved before this goes to publication. Thank you. So just to reprise some of the comments that have been made, I think if I start with Councillor Callaghan and the neat numbers, as Marion said, percentages sometimes skew what's an absolute number. So if you've got smaller numbers, percentages are bigger and disproportionate. I think with our own looked after children, we have had some very active work in recent years, sadly stymied by COVID. So Marion's team had been working on stepping up work experience, so that some of the things that Mr. Edwards was talking about in terms of work readiness and the support for those young people, they have had more regular work experience exposure from about year 8, I think, Marion, we were doing, weren't we? That obviously got curtailed with COVID, and I would expect that to be reactivated now. So we will have more of that work experience going through. We're working with partnerships, both the council and with external partners, for apprenticeships. So in terms of, again, giving our children the opportunities, we are doing a lot as a council, and a lot that we should be rightly proud of. If I take Councillor Williamson's comments about council tax numbers, again, it is one of those things which is really difficult. When you look at a table or you look at a set of statistics, how do you distill it into a paragraph or a sentence that actually represents the whole? And there's a lot to be said about contextualising. So again, as Mr. Edwards said, it could be that of 10 children in Rushcliffe, only 3 of them were claiming it because only 3 of them knew about it. It could be that more are now in Rushcliffe, but when you take the situation in context, then it is easier to understand the numbers rather than reading them as a snapshot on a paper. And if you want to have a conversation with me or with officers about the finer detail of that, then please do so outside this meeting. Councillor Meakin, I think Mr. Edwards has covered about the fact that the children have come from difficult backgrounds, were potentially already exposed to things. It isn't. It shouldn't be perpetuated that the children in our care are a completely blank canvas and they are suddenly exposed to criminality. They come into our care because of the difficult lives that they have had. Are there any other comments or observations on this paper? And I take us to the vote. All of those in favour? Thank you. Item 5 is the destination of Year 12-13 looked after young people in the cohort 2020 to 21. There is one recommendation on page 44 of your papers which I move.
I second this, Chairman, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Do I have any questions on this paper? Councillor Creamer, Councillor Henry and Meakin.
Sorry, just a couple, just for clarification. On one of them, on paragraph 9, the education destinations, it seems to be quite a large gap, and NEET 25%. So I'm just wondering, is there any actual extra plan, any strategy for actually decreasing the amount of people in NEET and increasing the apprenticeships, training, etc., etc.? I mean, it may have partly been answered, but I'm not too clear on it. So is there a specific strategy to address this? And just on item 10, just for clarification, the mathematics, is there a gender bias at all? Because it just mentions young people. I'd be interested to know if there's any sort of great gender difference. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Henry, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Mine's not a question as such, Chair. Mine is better of a phrase. For paragraph 16 and 20, I'm quite impressed, really, and quite pleased to see the figures in that one, especially in number 16, to show that we are actually working very hard here to get our young people to go on to further education, in particular university, and hopefully linking with 16 and 20, we should have 50 young people in university, hopefully by September, which is really good. So thank you very much to the team, really, for that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. It's always good for officers to hear that we are making positive progress and it's recognised and appreciated. Councillor Meakin, I think you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I welcome the reductions is looked after children not in education, employment and training as indication in paragraphs 9 and 10. Paragraph 17 states that it is recognised by a number of universities, including Nottingham, Trent and De Montfort, Leicester, that Nottinghamshire County Council has one of the best packages to support young people accessing university. Do we have any direct comparisons to back this statement up with similar authorities? Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions on this? So is it Steve or Marion? Which of you to respond?
This has been prepared by the Leaving Care team and the virtual school together, who work with the young people. First of all, in relation to Councillor Creamer's question, these are not percentages, these are numbers. Okay, because I think you'd asked at one of the previous the previous committees that we had the numbers if it was relevant. Okay, so they're numbers. And each of the children, or young people, sorry, are certainly tracked. The schools and colleges work, and you can see that most of the young people are in school and college where you would expect them to be, I would suggest. A small number of apprenticeships, and the NEET will be the young people who, as others, these are the real focus of the support that we have available. I don't have the gender breakdown in front of me. I would suspect there may well be a gender, but these numbers are small. I know we've got percentages here. The relative numbers in that cohort will be small, and I know that when we talk educationally and have done in the past about inspections, we don't tend to talk to Ofsted about percentages. We talk about the individual young people because the cohort will be so small. And I'm going to hand over to Mr. Edwards for the final question about the university packages, which I understand the package is generous.
Yeah, thanks, Marion. Just to sort of say, it goes back to Councillor Creamer's question, the earlier work that we talked about, the work readiness programmes that we're doing. And we're working now, and the achievement advisors are working with a lot of local businesses. And one of the really positive things is now they have identified people who'll mentor, and support young children. which is really positive. And of course, there's the Kickstart programme that we're having some success with. You know, those children that aren't ready for work, they really, really do need a lot of our support to get ready, and we do our very best to provide that. I do think we have a generous package of university support. I haven't got any information that I can share now to compare it to other sort of councils, but you know, the universities will take a wide range of children from all over the country, and if they're saying that we've got a good package, that's something we should be proud of, really. You know, but we can, if you want, look and see how we can compare. But that information is not always readily available, you know, in the press. But you know, it's really good that our universities think we do a good job, and the universities work with us as well, which is really positive.
Thank you. I think most of the points have been answered. I would probably pick up on Councillor Meakin's question and Mr Edwards' response. I think the reason that we're getting that reflection in paragraph 17 is because they are the universities closest to us, with whom we have a very close working relationship on our care leaver packages, and they are our partners in supporting us. But as Mr Edwards says, the students who go to those particular university campuses will be coming from all over the country. So the reflection in that paragraph is about how those universities perceive what we offer our young people versus what their care leaver population from elsewhere in the country is receiving in their time at university. I don't know how we would measure that. I think some local authorities are probably less open with their data and information. But the item that we discussed and approved in the last item, that strategy document, is significantly responsible for the success of this kind of work. So if there are no more questions and observations, if I can take us to the vote, all of those in favour, please. Thank you. Item 6 is the core data set performance for quarter 3. There is one recommendation on page 52, which I move.
I second those, Chairman, and reserve the right to speak.
Do I have any questions or observations on this paper? Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you. We welcome this report. Just out of interest, really, what is the total number of children missing for this year, or you know, is it for the quarter? I've been reading it. I'm not quite sure whether it's for the whole year or for the quarter. And also in Appendix 2, the attainment gap in the EYFS is 0.3. So that actually does show, although it's only small, that the gap is widening. And is this going to be addressed in the strategy to support these families going forward?
Can I just ask for clarification? When you say missing numbers, you're talking about missing
children.
Missing children rather than missing education?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Any other questions on this paper? No? Oh, Councillor Williamson.
Excuse me. So looking specifically around paragraphs 13, it talks about the slight reduction in children assessed as risk of CST for quarter 2 and quarter 3. But it also makes an interesting note that there's been an increase this quarter in these CSE meetings held for children not looked after by the local authority. Very briefly, as made Councillor Taylor, I'm sure you may be aware that on Friday there was a report published by the Young Women's Justice Project, which collated a lot of the existing data and research, and there was an indication, I think it was something around 90% of girls who had been in contact with the youth justice system have experienced some form of abuse from a family member or somebody they've trusted, and obviously it goes without saying that it's quite disgusting. Are we aware of how rampant this problem is with children that aren't looked after the authority within Nottinghamshire? You know, is something like this, as we come out of COVID, in the links with families that are responsible for the increase, and what plans really do we have to try and address this as an authority and make sure that it doesn't become another scandal, really.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions on this one? So I'll comment on your question first, Councillor Williamson, and I think Lawrence, who's on screen, may be responding to some of the other questions. I will stand corrected by an officer if I'm misunderstanding. It doesn't. My understanding is that it doesn't necessarily follow that because there is an increase of referrals or meetings that it means that the risk is that the occurrence of incidents is necessarily rising, because meetings are often taking place in order to discuss what is a perceived risk by professionals around a young person. So we shouldn't translate an increase in meetings into meaning an increase in prevalence. But having said that, I don't for a moment say that we do not have children who are at risk, and that is something that we're constantly addressing. So I will ask Lawrence to actually clarify that notion of it and answer the rest of your points, as well as answering Councillor Callaghan. Lawrence, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so just with the CSE meetings, that obviously reflects what we know and is referred or notified to the local authority. At the moment, the police are refreshing what they call their problem profile, which will be an assessment of the much wider set of information that's available around CSE, and we expect that at some point in the summer. Now, we won't be able to share the details of that assessment with committee, unfortunately, but it will give us an indication really around the prevalence of the problem and whether there's any changes in trends more widely that we need to know about and that the Safeguarding Children Partnership needs to respond to. So that work is in hand. There wasn't a large update of that assessment last year, largely because of staffing issues due to COVID. So it will be good to refresh that information so that we can reflect and act on that. Just in terms of the missing numbers, 324 is the quarterly figure for missing children that's contained in there, which is nearly the same as the previous quarter. It's always worth noting that range of missing is a whole range of different things, through contact disputes with parents where children haven't been returned and they've been reported, children that are missing just an hour or two sometimes, where a parent's concerned they don't know where they are, and the number of children that are persistently missing or missing for a long time remains very, very small.
Thank you, Lawrence. Are you able to pick up Councillor Callaghan's question about the attainment gap on Appendix 2?
I'm not, but I think Marion,
if you would like to pick that one up.
Okay, I've just, again, we need to be careful with the percentages because the numbers will be small in that cohort that were assessed. Again, I mean, the focus on the early years, reading and writing, is an absolute priority. It's a priority in the Mansfield-Ashfield project. We know we have many children in that area, but I think we'll find that it's a very small focus. And certainly, when working with schools, and indeed Ofsted as the carrot and stick, let's say, the outcomes of looked after children is a focus in every single school inspection. And I think governors themselves know that the outcomes for looked after is a priority. So yes, we're always concerned when we see the gaps grow, but I think we'll find, and I've just tried to check, I think it will be a very small cohort of children. Indeed, we're talking about. Yeah.
Thank you. And can I just bring Lawrence back in for a minute, just to clarify something for me and possibly for Councillor Williamson? I think I heard you say in your response that committee won't necessarily see some of the reporting from the study with the police. But how can we then reassure councillors as corporate parents about the work that's being done? Where will that sort of conversation go? Are you saying this is going to the Safeguarding Partnership?
It should do, and there may be elements that are restricted to a very small amount of people. It depends, to be honest, on what the detail is that's in the problem profile. If there are general trends, then we can certainly share them. It's sometimes the detail in there which isn't available publicly because of the protective marking on some of the assessments done by the police.
We appreciate the difference and the need for privacy at a certain level. Councillor Williamson's nodding at me, so I think he's happy with that. Thank you. So if I can take us to the vote on this one, all of those in favour? Thank you. Item 7 is a report on financial support for students in post-16 education and exceptional payments for school clothing and footwear. There are 2 recommendations on page 63 of the papers, which I move.
Second those, Chairman, and again reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Do I have any comments on this paper, please? No? Thank you. In that case, I'll take us straight to the vote on this one. All of those in favour? Thank you. Item 8 is a report from the Principal Child and Family Social Worker, and this is an annual report. There's one recommendation on page 72, which I move.
And I second that, Chair, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Do I have any questions or observations on this paper? Councillor Williamson.
Thank you. And again, I'll try not to be too long on it. No doubt the stagnation in pay has led to some recruitment problems we face with social care, and government statistics obviously revealed that social work pay was really no higher in 2020 than it was in 2012. So obviously that's why we always welcome a rise in average full-time equivalent pay for council social workers. Although I do think the 2% rise is somewhat offset by inflation. In the report, and I do apologise because I've only seen it at short notice, but there seems to be very little in the report in terms of any inducements other than fast tracking obviously graduates into a position. So wondering if we can hear more in terms of what plans we have to make social work at the county council a career that people really want to pursue, both in terms of take-home pay and any other rewards.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do I have any other questions on this? Councillor Henry.
This program, especially in paragraph 15, I was hoping that we would see more apprentices instead of just the numbers that have been presented here. I thought there'd be more apprentices chosen. And this program is really, for me, it's quite dear to my heart as well, because it's one of the programs that I used to be running. Steve and I remember the good old days, run here, and we won a national award for good example of practice here. So it's really good to see. But I'd just like to see a little bit more than that, because I'm sure there's more employees within our sector who would like to enter into this program and go on to be a social worker here. But I don't know what's been done really, apart from what I've seen on here. I'm not physically know what's been done to encourage people within the sector, within our services, growing our own basically, to apply for it, because I'm sure there's lots of people who are not social workers who worked in the social care environment who have more than up to ones who wants to apply. How do they go about doing that? And now, has it been changed, or is it the same? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edwards, you're going to pick those up. Thank you.
Okay, so we over the last few years we've done an awful lot of I think really positive work to first of all increase the number of students that we take. So we work as a teaching partnership now with the universities in Derby City, Nottingham Trent, Nottingham University, and the 4 D2N2 councils. And we've all pretty well in Nottinghamshire we've doubled over the last few years the amount of students that we take. And of course, if you get a good student and you give a student a good placement, they're going to want to work for you, and that's proved really positive recently. So we are very slowly starting to turn the curve with that. But as Councillor Williamson said, it's a massive sort of challenge, locally and nationally. Social workers, I think, that leave after 6 years on average and move out of frontline posts after 3 or 4 years. So there's going to be a constant need to continue to recruit and retain good quality social workers. And I think we're fortunate at the minute that we're bucking the trend in Nottinghamshire. We haven't cracked it, and we do still have vacancies. But the DFE data that we look at that compares us with other councils says that we're doing a lot better. You know, and that's because I think we've got a holistic package. We'll now be having, as well as the social work students, we'll have up to 15 people at any one time on the apprenticeship programme. We do the Step Up to Social Work programme that results in more social work students. Social workers in the Hard to Retain teams have been part of an enhanced offer through a market factor supplement, and we're looking to review that at the minute. So I think we do recognise how important our social workers are. We're probably, you know, looking at our office spaces as well and getting them up to shape, getting the basic hygiene right for social workers so they can come to work, feel confident, feel supported, and be able to get on with the job. And we're doing a lot of really good work out, you know, to do that. But nationally, there are more than 6,000 at any one time social work shortages. So it is a real challenge.
Can I just come back, Chair?
Councillor Williamson, would you switch your mic off?
Oh, sorry.
You can now.
Yeah,
Thank you, Councillor.
thank you. I know you mentioned placements as well in it, and I didn't, for one reason or another, there. But if we have, like in paragraph 17, I know the 7 cohorts we had, 6 people decided to stay here. So what I'm trying to ask here is whether or not we are doing anything to increase the amount of student placement, not those ones that we've recruited internally, but those ones that come from other universities. Have we got more practice educators, for example, so we can support more students within our teams? And what we're doing to increase the practice educators so that people can want to come for practice placement here. And when they come up practice placement here, they'll stay because we're giving them a good offer. That's the sort of thing I wanted.
So we do. Those from the Step Up in paragraph 17 are just a small sort of part of it. There's 50 odd other placements as well that we've used, and including universities like Sheffield and Sheffield Hallam, we still take placements from. I think the Step Up programme, the apprenticeship programme, getting students in and giving them a really positive experience in Nottinghamshire is the way. There's not one way to do it. You've got to cover a lot of bases, and it'll still be really challenging.
Councillor Lee, I think you indicated, and then Councillor Anderson.
Chairman, thank you very much. I wasn't going to speak. I think we all say that, and then we speak. I've been lucky enough many years ago that I've worked with our social workers, and they're absolutely superb. And I'm being serious. They're absolutely superb. I knew social workers used to come in on the days off to make sure the children that they were looking after, that all their files are done, and other people that were on holidays, they'd come in just to double check somebody that was watching them. So we have some great members of staff. But what I would say is what are we doing to children in primary schools, secondary schools, want to have that ambition to come and be a social worker at Nottinghamshire County Council? When you ask kids, what do you want to be? It's, I want to be a footballer, or I want to be this, I want to be that. I want to hear kids saying, I want to work for Nottinghamshire County Council, I want to do this, I want to do that. Because this is a great place to work. I've worked here. I'm now a councillor here. And we have some of the best staff in the country, in my personal opinion. And we should be getting our kids wanting to work here. So I think you've already touched on it, but I'd say, what are we doing to recruit the workers of the future, the next 20, 30 years?
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I'll take Councillor Anderson's question first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question may have been partly answered. Given that the most recent Department of Education and Social Workforce data indicates that there is an acute shortage of experienced children and family social workers, 6,100 vacancies nationally as of the 30th of September 2020, and that the Department for Education estimates that the average child and family social worker stays in the profession for 7 years and will stay on the front line protection role for only 3 years. What are we doing in Nottinghamshire to support the recruitment and retention of children and family social workers in Nottinghamshire, and how do we compare to the national average?
Thank you. If you'd like to pick up off Councillor Lee's and then Councillor Anderson's questions, thank you.
Yeah, I think it was a brilliant question, actually. And how do you get younger people involved in thinking about social work? We can give older people, children, some offers of work experience. It's difficult for the younger children, but I know what you mean. One of the things that I'm really pleased about is the development of the university at West Knox College, that Nottingham Trent, and I think if we can have a social work course there, which is on the cards, you know, and get more local people to be, you know, involved in that, I think that would be absolutely excellent. You know, Ashfield, Mansfield, Bassetlaw, where we have most of our social care involvement in the lives of children and families. Wouldn't it be great if we had a university, you know, in that area that was recruiting really, really good people from those communities? We did some work experience with bringing children that have been in the care system actually into the council. You know, and we do a lot of apprenticeships and youth service apprenticeships. But I think social work, you've got to get to a certain age, you know, before we can give people that level of experience of working in children and families where a lot of things aren't going as well as they could do. But I think we do promote as well as we can social work within our communities. And to move on to Councillor Anderson's question, I think it is a range of things that we do. So in terms of retaining and recruiting staff, we've talked about the student placements and delivering high quality placements. You can deliver loads of student placements, and if you're not very good at it, you'll never get anyone to work for you, because the word will spread like wildfire. So you've got to offer quality placements through the teaching partnership that we lead on behalf of the D2N2 councils. We've got a really good continual professional development offer. There's regular training. We work really hard to get the offices fit and up to scratch for people. The apprenticeship programme that we've talked about, there really has to be a range of things in it, and it feels really positive to me that we're starting to buck the trend and starting to do a little bit better than some other councils. So the things that we're doing, the range of things, a really good ASYE year. The ASYE is your first year as a social worker. It's sort of like an apprenticeship, really, where they'll have a practice educator person supporting them and a personal mentor. You know, and credit to those social workers that have started working for Nottinghamshire in the last couple of years, because they've been doing a really, really difficult job. You know, and they've been doing it from the bedrooms and the kitchens. They haven't had that support from the colleagues in the offices as much as we would have liked. So, you know, that we've retained some of those colleagues and they've survived the pandemic and become social workers. A massive credit to them and the frontline managers who have supported them through, you know, well, we all know, don't we? It's been a really difficult couple of years. So.
Thank you. Councillor Barney, did you indicate?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in a comment, really. I think from my own personal perspective, if I were to have my life again, I think the career path I would want to take is that of social work. I think it's the most incredibly rewarding and life transforming career you can possibly have. I know in my own family's perspective of working in the foster system, the care system, the social worker involvement and the bond that forms between foster families, foster children and social workers is actually incredible. I think some of the deepest relationships in our family have been formed between ourselves and the social worker, because you fall together, you rise together, you cheer together, you cry together. That journey, that path is just extraordinary. And I think it's a great shame that in the media, all too often, all we ever hear about social workers is when things have gone wrong. Of course, things go wrong. They're dealing with the most difficult and impossible circumstances imaginable faced by families in our country. And all too often, all we hear is social workers being rubbish. And I think together, collectively, cross-party, we want to stand up for social workers and we want to cheer on the work they're doing. The work they're doing is of the most value, of the highest value, and the difference they make in families' lives, not only in foster children's lives, but also to those families who we're fostering, is extraordinary and exceptional. So together, big cheer for social workers, and let's all stop being counsellors and become social workers.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. No, I always enjoy listening to you, and you always seem to lift the room, so thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't want to do it before you said yes. Well, you're welcome to the social work arena, Councillor Barney. It's not too late to train to be a social worker and join us. What I was going to ask, Steve, is the financial bit of the program. I just want to know what proportion of the £25 million that we have for the apprenticeship levy that we spend on the social work recruitment side of things. Do you know? Do you have it at hand?
I can find out, but I don't have that, immediately available now.
Thank you. If you would follow up on that, Steve, that would be very useful for us to know, I think. I don't know where to start now. Lots of your questions were sort of interlinked in reality, and I think we've most of the points answered. I think what I would summarise with, and it picks up on a specific point that Councillor Williamson asked at the beginning, you were asking specifically about the numbers and the value. I think that from the feedback we're getting, and in respect of both things that have been said and the social work health checks and the feedback we get from our staff, I don't think a lot of people do this for the money, and I accept that. Our salaries are important for all of us, and having our value recognised is important for all of us, and particularly for people doing this. But my understanding from officers is that when we're hearing why social workers are either leaving the industry, leaving us as an authority, moving around, that there seems to be a pattern to the way people enter this particular profession, the duration of their early careers, how they move about in it, and some of it is linked to times in their lives, significant times, starting a family, whatever else it might be. What we're not hearing is you don't pay us enough and that's the reason we want out. There are lots of other things going on in people's lives, but not necessarily that. And a lot of the feedback we're getting is more about lifestyle choices, so whether people choose to do it part-time, whether they don't want to be a frontline social worker at a point in their lives because they actually want to be a manager knowing that they've only got to do so many hours, whatever it is. So whilst I acknowledge your question and I acknowledge, I guess, the meaning behind the question, that has not been a significant reason to us as an authority and an employer as to why social workers are not coming to us in droves or why they sometimes move on. So, I think it's really important to note all of the things that we do, and they've already been articulated about the different schemes, be it Grow Your Own, supporting people, apprenticeships, and I think one particular thing of note is the social work health check, which was mentioned, paragraphs 40 to 42, and the responses we're getting from our workforce about what they feel it means to work for us as a local authority are positive in terms of how they're valued and how they're treated and the support that they have from us. Now, that doesn't mean for a moment that we cannot always do more and do better, and I think that's very much what officers are committed to and engaged in, and I would just like to commend both the social work workforce and the officers who are leading them, and particularly the authors of this report and the work that's gone into it. So if I may, I'll take us, Councillor Williamson, quick.
Sorry, just to clarify, can't say what I do appreciate it. I wasn't suggesting for a second that staff are leaving us because they're underpaid or underappreciated or anything like that. I do want to make that very clear. It was just a question about if there was maybe a bit more that we could offer or any inducements we could. I just wanted to make that clear. I'm not suggesting we underpay anybody or they're not looked after at all.
No, and I certainly didn't interpret it that way. Thank you. Can I take us to the vote, please? All of those in favour? Thank you. And thank you for the debate on that. I think it was a very important thing to discuss. Item 9 is the Supporting Families update and changes to the family service staffing establishment. There are 3 recommendations on page 78, which I move.
And I second this, Chair.
Do I have any questions on this paper, please? Councillor Callaghan.
Paragraph 10 regarding the Reducing Parent Conflict programme. Do we know if practitioners across the partnership have delivered this programme? And is there any evaluation regarding the improvements for families?
Thank you. Do I have any other questions on this one? So I think we have Rachel Miller on screen. Rachel, are you able to answer Councillor Callaghan's question?
I am, yes. Good morning, colleagues. So we absolutely do have the data on the number of practitioners trained and then what they've gone on to deliver. It's not necessarily just that they would be trained and then they deliver a course, because it builds into their practice with families. So you might just build it into doing an everyday assessment or doing a piece of parenting work, and this would improve your skills of having some of these conversations. So it's not just that people will have gone on courses, but I can get the data. I don't have it to hand in terms of how many people have accessed training and then how many families we think that's gone on to impact. There has also been an independent evaluation across the region, the East Midlands region, of last year's spending and what that achieved. So I can share that with members if that's of interest in terms of the impact. This will be something that continues to be evaluated regionally. We're working together. There's one person employed across the region that kind of does some work to pull everyone together, and they've got within their remit that kind of an impact evaluation. So I can absolutely get that for people.
Thank you, Rachel. I am seeing nods in the room, so if you could get that out to the committee members, that would be useful. Thank you.
I will, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this paper? No? We'll go straight to the vote on that one then. Thank you. All of those in favour? Thank you. Item 10 is the Neurodevelopmental Behavioural Support Service. There are 2 recommendations on page 84, which I move.
And I second those, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Do I have any questions on this particular paper? Councillor Callaghan.
Right. Envoy Partnership undertook an evaluation of the Small Steps service in 2018 on behalf of Family Action, which highlighted concerns regarding capacity and communication. Going forward, will capacity and communication be improved for families across the concerning behaviours pathway, as some children's issues have worsened with the long wait to see a paediatrician? And obviously, this is not early intervention, and in some aspects, this intervention hasn't been fit for purpose with the long wait that a lot of families have experienced. And obviously we're going into pay, and also what will that look like in the transition period for these families? Will it be an increased wait, or I see that you're going to employ some more staff? However, Small Steps have got agency staff on to meet some of this shortfall. They won't be there any longer. So again, how long will the waiting list be going forward for these families? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Do I have any other questions on this? No. Well, I will hand over to officers, but before I do, I will make the observation. I think this is not a service delivered or commissioned by the local authority. This is a service commissioned by the CCG, which has been delivered to date by Family Action, as you've outlined. They're a well-respected national charity. There have been high demands here, and there have been capacity issues. So I think it's important to note that this is not something that we have been failing to deliver. This has been something that the CCG has commissioned elsewhere and has now asked us to be the provider of. I'll pass over to officers. Sorry, Councillor Callaghan, you want to add?
But part of the partnership alongside Small Steps and the CCG, which Notts County Council is part of, they will have had that information that there's been issues, going back to 2018. So again, forming some of that, taking responsibility as a whole group, not just as, well, it's that service. Really, we could have led this a little bit earlier, in my opinion. Thank you.
I'll ask officers to respond, and then I'll close up on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start, and then I'll pass over to Lawrence to talk about some of the detail of the TUPE. In terms of the Envoy report and the particular findings around capacity and communication, that's something that we're aware of. Your members will be aware that the value of the contract is not increasing. However, for the first 18 months of after the transfer into the local authority, the CCGs are willing to invest quite a large amount more funding as required to help deal with the backlog. As you point out, it's going to be a challenge. We're taking on a service which has got a significant backlog that we haven't had anything to do with that backlog, and we're going to have to do things differently to try and address it. It is our belief that this will be a success because of how well functioning the parenting offer is within the family service and within our children's centre service. We already deliver some really fantastic parenting interventions which will suit families on the Small Steps waiting list. So one of the asks in this paper that you've noted is to increase our capacity to deliver those parenting programmes, and we're using some of that upfront additional money from the CCGs in order to do that. We, just in respect of the agency members of staff that are currently employed by Family Action, we're aware of them. We're meeting with them alongside meeting with the rest of the service, and we have agreed again with the CCG that should we feel it would help and augment the service offer when it comes in June, that we will potentially look to continue employing those agency staff funded by the CCGs, again, in this period where we're trying to address the backlog in the waiting list. We absolutely will have on our mind communication. I note your comment there around could we have done something sooner? It's certainly the case that members of staff in our frontline services, our family service, our children's centre service, have been escalating concerns to team managers who in turn have escalated them up to managers like myself. And we have been in close collaboration with the CCGs to try and improve the situation. And in fact, it's that collaboration that has led to the CCGs believing that the best option is to come and bring this contract to the local authority. And of course, once we take it on, we'll be able to do significantly more. Communication with families on that waiting list will absolutely be one of our #1 priorities. We've got no reason to believe that families will wait longer as a result of the service coming in. We're already doing work to go through that waiting list and identify where might families be able to go on to access a range of provision that would already be available to them. So there's lots of ways in which I think things are going to improve, and that we will in fact mean that those families wait less than they would if we weren't changing hands. Lawrence, I'll pass over to you to pick up on anything around TUPE and the transition period.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just pick up on governance as well, because I wouldn't want to give the impression that there is a place where we are jointly responsible for the delivery of Small Steps alongside the CCG. The CCG are responsible for Small Steps. The CCG have been aware for quite a while of those issues and have been working through with the provider to try and address them. But I think the idea that we've got a place where governance of Small Steps is jointly done is just not a fact. We don't have one. In terms of TUPE arrangements, normally we would get details of staff coming over 28 days before any transfer takes place. We've got a really good working relationship with Family Action. in terms of the transfer of service. So we will be getting staffing details well ahead of that, and we'll be able to plan through, therefore, what we do with staffing. That combined staffing resource of what's there, plus the fact that the work can actually be shared out more widely in the family service to some extent, because we know some of those families and hold information on them, should mean that we get kind of an economy of scale in terms of the staffing. So it should be really positive.
Thank you, Lawrence. Do I have any other questions on this one? No? Casting my mind back a few months now, Councillor Callaghan, I think this was a subject very close to your heart, as it remains, and is the subject about which you asked your very first question, either at full council or first committee. So I do have a memory of that, and I do understand how close this is to you. I think officers have responded as fully as they can at the moment, and I think that the most important thing for us now as a committee is to seize this opportunity, this work, so that we are the deliverers and that the families and children do get the quality of service and the timeliness of service that they should be getting. And I do believe that what we're now proposing with the CCG will actually do that to improve the situation for everyone. So with that, I'll take us to the vote, please. All of those in favour? Thank you, that's carried. The next report is the Whole Family Safeguarding Programme Progress Report. There are 5 recommendations on page 93, which I move.
And I second those, Chair.
And before I ask for any questions, I'm going to start on this one by welcoming Lucy Peel as the new Service Director. So since our last committee meeting in January, we have gone through a recruitment process, which Lucy successfully secured. So welcome, Lucy, in your new role. I think this is the first paper then to committee. Now you've got a couple of others later on, also with your name on. But congratulations and thanks to those colleagues who actually participated in the recruitment process. Lucy's got an enormous job to do, and I'm sure she'll do it very well. So thank you. Do I have any questions on this paper, please? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Lucy, it's a really great report and really pleasing to see the kinship support service coming into effect, because we've spoke about how vital kinship is as an aim of keeping children within their families, and the benefit not only does that have to the child but to the whole family and the support we can offer, and also to the cost avoidance figures which you quote at 2.6 million over the period up to 25-26. I wonder if you had a best estimate of how many children that actually is, that you could share with us. Thank you.
And I think Councillor Meakin, you also indicated, if I can take your question, thank you.
It's more of a comment, Chairman, thank you. Can we wholeheartedly welcome this? The family safeguarding model has proved effective in preventing children coming into care and reducing child protection planning numbers. Putting children into care should be an absolute last resort, and this joint work is welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meakin, and I think that's a hear from everyone in the chamber, absolutely. Councillor Callaghan.
Yeah, and as a practitioner working with lots of kinship carers, it's great to see that actually there will be some support offered for a lot of these kinship carers. A lot of these kinship carers who care for family members haven't always got the monetary enablement to support families. So again, this can only be positive going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Lucy, would you like to respond? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Taylor. Yes, the report proposes a range of innovations that we think will really seek to improve children's outcomes. And as members have commented, that the kinship care support service is one of the key projects within that. What the new service will do is provide much more consistent support to those children who have a special guardianship order. So they might be children who've previously been in local authority care, potentially with a friends and family foster carer who then choose to become a special guardian. But actually our support to those children they don't get the same consistency of support as you might receive if you were a foster carer, for example, or if a child was adopted. So what this support service will do is seek to provide support both to those children in those contexts, improve the support to children who are looked after and who are with kinship carers, and indeed better signposting and advice to those children who are living in informal kinship arrangements, so who aren't involved with a local authority, but actually where we know if we can provide better support to those children in those circumstances, that will hopefully enable them to remain out of care and for a period of time. We also know that for those children who are placed with friends and family carers, they're often with grandparents or extended family members in our most disadvantaged communities. So actually it's kind of both morally right, but also from a kind of investment perspective, it makes sense that we provide support to try and enable them to live safely within those families and remain connected to the communities that they live in. I don't have the detail to hand on the exact numbers that the business case relates to. I'm just trying to find it. But the modelling that we've done reflects the potential of both, if a child's lived with a long-term foster carer for a period of time who may choose to become a special guardian, that would therefore mean that child no longer is looked after by the local authority, and therefore that reduces some of the social work costs associated with being involved in that child or that family's life, the independent reviewing officer costs, and equally supporting children to remain within a friends and family placement. The data indicates that actually those placements, if well supported, are much more stable than you might expect to see a child in a foster care placement or particularly residential care placement. So the modelling that's been done is around reducing the numbers of children in those placements also. So whilst I can't give you the figure, I'm happy to share that following the meeting, if that's okay.
Thanks, Lucy. Councillor Lee, I think you indicated.
Chairman, thank you. It's on what you've just mentioned. So me and my wife have 2 young children, and we've looked in the past, if we die, who are going to look after our children. The one concern that we have had with the age of our parents, if they were to have them, is what reviews are the county council doing to make sure if children do go on to grandparents, that there is a review to make sure ongoing care is possible. Example, my mum and dad, 70, 80-year-old, obviously they're going to struggle as they get older to look after very young children. So where that does happen, what does the county council do to make sure any help and assistance and a review goes on, or is there any at all?
Councillor Lee, I think we're probably talking about slightly different circumstances, but I will be corrected by officers. But I know when my children were younger and we put in clauses into our wills about who would take care of them afterwards, I don't believe that's the same situation as children in care, and I'm not sure that there's a responsibility on the authority, but I'll stand corrected by officers. You want to come back?
No, I'll come back. But what I mean is I've had a look at that. So, example, if children are going to grandparents, because that's then people who can look after them, what reviews are we doing to make sure as they get older that they're still able to look after them? Because at the end of the day is what is ready now for someone to look after may not be in 10 years, 15 years, or even 2 years' time.
And I would reiterate, Councillor Lee, I think that's a different set of circumstances, and to what extent does the state or the local authority have a hand in what are family circumstances such as those? But I'm hoping that officers will clarify this one for me.
It's a really good question. It's also a really, really complicated legal question, because Councillor Taylor's absolutely right. You know, the sad situation that you and your wife died, and the children would be hopefully supported by whatever relatives that you'd got. And if your children were placed with elderly relatives who were struggling to cope, the local authority would probably see those children as children in need and work with the family to support them. Of course, if your children were orphaned and there wasn't anyone in the extended family to care for them, then that would be a different set of circumstances, and we do a whole wider set of assessments of that, and it could end up in someone's got to have parental responsibility for children, you know. So in that sad circumstance, it would be different. So it's difficult to comment other than generally, and to say that Councillor Taylor's right in that the state hasn't really got a responsibility, except in extreme circumstances, to step in and protect children. But in the scenario of, children looked after by grandma and granddad and they were struggling, we would be able to see them as child in need and offer some support.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Colin, did you want to come in on that one?
Yes, if I may. This is a new investment, a new piece of work. Full council agreed £400,000 to see around kinship care. And I'm conscious that two of the local MPs were speaking in Westminster Hall last week. MP Lee Anderson and MP Ben Bradley spoke in a debate in Westminster Hall about kinship and babies last week. Lucy, just to make members aware, Lucy and I, to check that we're on the right track and not going up the wrong pathway, met with Dr. Lucy Peake, who is the Chief Executive of the Kinship Charity, who've been funded by the Department for Education to develop these kind of initiatives. That was a really constructive, challenging but supportive meeting. And I think we'll look to be working with the Kinship Charity in a partnership way going forward as part of this investment.
Thank you, Colin. I think just to reprise on this one, I think what's significant for us to note is the things that we're focusing on. So, as Colin said, Kinship Support Service, a new service to better support the extended family and friends caring for children. Edge of care, so flexible and creative and intensive support to young people on the edge of care. And interestingly, given the debates we've had earlier this morning, social work apprenticeships to grow the number of social workers that we recruit and retain. So again, I'm pleased this morning as we're going through the programme and the agenda that we see how we have overlapping, interlinking work streams, and that the focus and investment we're putting will pull different things together, all the while to better support our families and young people. So that said, if we could have a vote on this one, please, all of those in favour. Thank you, that's carried. Item 12 is changes to the staffing establishment in the multi-agency safeguarding hub and the early help unit. There are 3 recommendations at page 101, which I move.
I'll second those, Chair.
And I think, Lucy, ironically, this one's kind of got your name on it with your old hat on. So do I have any questions on this paper from members? Councillor Callaghan.
Yeah. We'd welcome this report, and we do see the need, because staffing are really inundated. But the only sad thing for me on reflection is that saying there's a lot more coming through to the early help unit, families asking for help and support. Not all of them need it, maybe they can be signposted on, but there is a significant increase in need for this service. So we would support this service anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. That's very much appreciated. Lucy, was there anything you wanted to draw our attention to particularly in the report?
I just think it's important to note the progress we've made since the report that came to committee in September, which initially established some temporary capacity to both make sure that both the early help unit and the MASH actually are able to manage with the increase in demand that they're seeing. But also, whilst we seek to improve and try and work with a partnership to make sure that families can access that support earlier in the pathway rather than immediately jumping to needing a kind of a safeguarding response, actually that's a really substantial long-term piece of work that we're going to be doing with our partners, because we recognise that those partners who make inquiries to the MASH come from a place of caring about the children and families that they're working with. So it's an understandable step that they take. But we think that by working more collaboratively between the early help unit and MASH, actually we can get better support and earlier support to those families at the same time. This is a really key part of our wider transformation activity linked to the whole family safeguarding report earlier, because actually it's only by working together effectively as a partnership and by growing the confidence of our partners that we'll be able to effectively support families earlier and hopefully then free up some social work time in order that those social workers can spend more time doing purposeful direct work with children and families. So we've made progress. The report notes the work that we're doing with Essex County Council as a sector-led improvement partner. That's also really critical for us, because it's one of the things we're doing is seeking to look outside of the authority at where where best practice is taking place, so that can shape our service developments moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Lucy. Again, I think just drawing a colleague's attention to the fact that this feeds into the paper we just debated. All of these projects and work streams are very much interlinked. So this feeds very much into the whole family safeguarding. Completely agree, Councillor Callaghan. It is sad if there is an increase in referrals. They have wider societal causes, but the way that we address them when we receive the inquiries is significant, both to how we handle them in the first instance and to what support we're then able to give to the families and children. And from my way of thinking, it's better to look at an issue on a needs-led basis, not a threshold-led basis. That hasn't always been the case, and there's an awful lot of work to be done with our partners to shape everybody's thinking about how referrals reach us in the first place. But a very, very welcome piece of work. So if I take us to the vote on this one, please, all of those in favour. Thank you. The next item is changes to the staffing establishment in the independent chairing service. There is one recommendation on page 106 of your papers, which I move.
And I second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Any questions or observations, colleagues? Councillor Callaghan.
Oh, it's not. It's really they're all interlinking, like
Absolutely.
you've said. So you know, although they're separate reports, they are actually one can't work without the other. So we would support them anyway.
Thank you, and that support is very much appreciated. Do I have any other questions? So straight to the vote on this one. All of those in favour. Thank you, colleagues. Item 14, changes to the staffing establishment in the information and systems team. I suspect that one will also be recognised as a positive step. There are 3 recommendations on page 111 of your papers, which I move.
I second those, Chairman.
Do I have any observations on this paper? Councillor Smith, do you want to speak? We'll go straight to the vote then. Thank you. All of those in favour? Thank you. Item 15 is the establishment of a temporary deputy principal educational psychologist post. The recommendation is at page 114, which I move.
I second those and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Any questions or observations on this particular paper? Goodness me. Councillor Smith, did you have anything to add?
No, I just think it's worth noting that an increase in the leadership capacity that this paper brings will enable our education teams and their teams to be more integrated with the Children with Disabilities Service, which I think is a positive, and also welcome the fact that the high needs block, which is helping to fund this, is increasing by nearly £11 million, which I think is good, but demand is increasing as well, so that needs to be noted. But this is a paper that will make a real difference to the service we provide.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Yes, it is worth noting, and also that we're still anticipating the government's SEND review, so it's anticipated imminently. I'm just not sure we all work on SEND calendars, but can I take us to the vote, colleagues? All of those in favour? Thank you. Item 16 is local authority governor appointments to school governing bodies from September to February. One recommendation on page 119, which I move.
Second those, Chairman, and in doing so I just want to thank all those people who are coming forward. I think it's really good. I'm a governor myself and I know how challenging but crucial and rewarding these roles can be. So welcome them to their position and thank them for volunteering.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Lee, you indicated.
And Sam beat me to it, as he knows I say that every time. So I would like to support Councillor Sam Smith's comments and echo them.
Thank you, colleagues. Any other observations on this paper? No. Obviously, I can only echo the comments made by Councillors Smith and Lee. Without governors, schools would not function in the way that they do. They're a valuable part of the leadership structure, and we're grateful for those volunteers. So if we can vote on this one, please, all of those in favour. Thank you, that's also carried. Item 17 is a response to a government consultation on the proposed changes to the School Admission Appeals Code. There is one recommendation on page 123 which I move.
Second that, Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have any questions on this paper, colleagues? Councillor Meakin.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a comment more than a question. Firstly, I just want to say what an excellent job the Democratic Services do in facilitating school admissions. This can be a highly emotional process, and feedback I get from the parents who have gone through the process is that the professionalism of the team makes this process easier. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meakin. Any other comments on this one? I'm actually grateful for you expressing that, Councillor Meakin, because we've had National Offer Day for secondary places recently. We know, whether it's primary or secondary, that this is an incredibly tense and emotive time for parents. Even those who've been successful will have gone through a period of anticipation and nervousness. And I completely agree with you that whilst these situations for appeals are always difficult for families, that the professionalism of the staff that we have that handle them is excellent, and I'm grateful that their work's being acknowledged now. Thank you. Can I have a vote on this one, colleagues, then, please? You have the response before us, which was also crafted, I think, by Democratic Services. All of those in favour? Thank you, that's carried. And the final item today is the work programme. There is one recommendation on page 152, which I move.
Second that, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions on the work programme, colleagues? No, in which case, can we have a vote on that one? We accept the work programme. Thank you. And with that, our business today is concluded. Thank you. I didn't think we could get through an agenda that long as efficiently as we have, so I'm grateful to everyone. Stuart, would you like to end the feed? Thank you.